Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the funeral services of Mr. Brian K. Harris. For those of you who are joining us via live stream, we welcome you. For those of you who are here, please be sure that your cell phones have been turned off or to the quiet mode. Officiating is Rabbi Aaron Melman from Congregation Beth Shalom in Northbrook. The ceremony of Kriya has been taken care of earlier this afternoon. At this time, we're going to begin the sacred funeral ceremony of Mr. Brian K. Harris.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, Bino deshe yarbitzeni, Al mei menuchot yinahaleni, Nafshi eshovev, Yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo, Gam ki elech begeit salmavet, Lo yirara ki ata imadi, Shivtecha umishontecha, Hema yenachamuni, Taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai, Dishantav Hashem en roshi, Kosi revaya, Achtov v'chesed yirdufuni, Kol yemei chayai, Veshavti beveit Adonai, Leorech Yamim. We begin this afternoon with the words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Ki rachem av al banim richam Adonai al yireav, ki hu yada yitzrenu zachur ki afar anachnu, Enosh kechatzir yamav ketzitza sadeh ken yatzitz, ki ruach avrabo ve'enenu velo yakirenu od mekomo, ve'chesed Adonai me'olam ve'ad olam al yireav, ve'tzid kato livnei vanim. It's a selection of the 103rd Psalm. As a father has compassion for his children, God has compassion for those who show reverence. God knows how we are fashioned. God remembers that we are dust. The days of mortals are like grass. We flourish as the flowers of the field. A wind passes over them and they are no more, and no one can recognize where they grew. But God's compassion is everlasting. God's kindness to children's children, to all the reverent ones, endures age after age, unchanging. Tell us, God, what our term is. Tell us the measure of our days. Were we to know, we would know then certainly how fleeting life is, how quickly we gray. You have made our life just handbreadths long. Its span is as nothing in your sight. No one endures any longer than a breath. We walk about as a mere shadow. Mere futility is our hustle and bustle, amassing treasure and not knowing who will gather in. What then can we depend on, God? We shall depend on you. In you lies our hope. These are words of the 34th Psalm, which reminds us that God is close to the brokenhearted and those crushed in spirit. There are some questions to which there are no answers. What matters today is that we focus on how Brian Harris lived and how he showed his love. We are nearing the end of the 7-week period between Passover and Shavuot, known as the Omer. The rabbis in the ancient work of the Mishnah referred to Shavuot with the word atzeret. The fact that we recite Yizkor on holidays, including Shavuot, reminds us that all whom we love are mortal, and that the time must come when we have to take leave of them as well. The word atzeret that the rabbis used, initially interpreted as final, also means retain. And it is taught that this, the closing days of our festivals, was the time when we sought to retain some of the religious fervor and the heightened spirit of a particular holiday season. It is human nature to hold on as long as we can to that which is precious to us. However, even when we must take leave of one another, we can still retain that which is significant. For God has given us the power to remember. Memory is a faculty which enables us to make the past a present reality and to keep alive the challenges surmounted, the joys experienced, the sorrows faced through the years that we are privileged to share with a loved one. And so today we come to remember Brian Harris. As members of the family shared stories with me yesterday, there were stories of Brian before Parkinson's and of Brian with Parkinson's. The disease took its toll on him as it slowed his brain, something, as I was told, that definitely frustrated him as he struggled with not being himself. And he didn't necessarily follow his own advice, but God help his children if they didn't listen. He worked hard to support his family, the most important thing in the world to him, and he cherished every day he had with his boys. Today we confront the realization that there is much in life, as well as death, that is not under our control. And there is an aspect of life that the biblical book of Ecclesiastes speaks about. Life is exquisite and overwhelming in its complexity, often defying comprehension. That's why the book of Ecclesiastes is probably written the way it is. Life is never one thing. It's never all joy or all sadness. It's laughing and weeping, dancing and mourning, seeking and losing, and sometimes never even finding. And Ecclesiastes speaks about different times in life, good and bad, easy and hard. And Ecclesiastes is also right when he says there is a time for silence and a time for talking. Now is the time for talking. And I don't just mean public speaking, as we'll do this afternoon, but to continue to share the stories of Brian's life. And in doing so, we hope and pray that the healing process will begin. As I was told, he was the shirt off his back kind of guy who was described as generous, selfless, and giving, and had no fear. He could get into any room at any place at any time, and to him everything was the best, even if it was raw hamburger meat. He was the role model of a husband. Iris, you were married 51 years, and you shared with me that his last words were, "I love you. I really love you." At this time, I want to pause and invite you forward to share your words.
Just taking a look around this room, Brian would be so happy to see so many faces coming to share with his family. In behalf of the Harris family, I just want to welcome everyone who has come to honor and remember our Brian. Brian loved and cherished every moment he spent with his children and his grandchildren. He was a very loving father, grandfather, husband, and a very good friend to all of his friends. We will all miss Brian so very much. Love you forever. And rest in peace. He is going to be in a much better place, I know, because he struggled terribly for the last couple of years. Thank you.
Iris, you spoke of family vacations yesterday when we talked, where he was truly able to enjoy his boys as he often worked 6 days a week and didn't necessarily get to all their games and events. And your family shared that he loved you very much. Even when he wasn't feeling well, he still showed you the utmost respect and treated you like a queen. You said that this helped teach your sons how to be loving husbands and how to treat their wives. I hope today begins a small measure of healing for you that will only increase over time. It was shared that Brian and Iris did an amazing job raising their sons. Truly a great father. Corey and Michelle, Jason and Erica. Both Michelle and Erica commented on how lucky they were to marry incredible boys, that's their words, raised by amazing parents. Brian was proud that he was able to make Michelle and Erica's engagement rings. He loved talking about color, clarity, and the cut of diamonds, which he knew so much about. He truly valued education and wanted his sons to pursue graduate degrees. He really wanted them, as I was told, to both be lawyers, which hopefully I'm not stealing your words, Corey, but as you said, probably stems from his desire to want to be a lawyer, but ultimately not able to. He showed you the good things about life and shared his love of nature with you. And whether it was ski lifts, mountain bikes, or deep sea fishing, or even a roller coaster, he tried to pass on his no-fear attitude to you. I'd like to invite, I'm going out of order, I apologize. Ignore that for a moment. In a moment, you're going to share your words. And as you share those stories with us, share your memories. I hope that this will only be the beginning of sharing publicly the stories of the relationship with your father. You shared a lot with me yesterday, and I hope you will continue to share those stories throughout your lifetimes with all who will listen, so that ultimately they might bring some more smiles to your faces. Brian was Papa to Ari, Skylar, Brady, Preston, and Laura. Laura, you wanted me to share specifically that he hugged you very tightly. It was a very special memory for you. I hope that the five of you will continue to share your stories with each other as his grandchildren. And I'd like to invite you all up now to share some words.
Papa, you and Grandma Iris are the two biggest fans of my photography. Not only did you look forward to my pictures, but you framed a few in your house. That meant the world to me. I didn't know the last time I'd speak with you was on Mother's Day. I called the house looking to speak to Grandma Iris, but you picked up. I got to speak with you one last time this past weekend, and you wanted to hear all about Michigan and what I'm doing this summer. I'm sorry I wasn't able to sit down with you and talk about it more. I'm going to miss the say love you papa, followed by the tight hug bookending our time together. No one is really gone until they are forgotten, and for as long as I live, I will never forget you. Love you, Papa.
Dear Papa, I last heard your voice on Sunday. I called to wish Grandma Iris a happy Mother's Day, and you told me that you loved me and I never thought that would be the last time I spoke to you. You were the best grandpa I could have asked for, and I continue to feel so lucky knowing that I was your first granddaughter. My dad always talks about how good of a father you were. He says that you taught him everything you know. My dad has been the best father to me, so I can only imagine the father you were to him. I remember sitting in your basement one summer with my brothers. You were giving us what we learned to call special coins. I watched you carefully hand us each a pack of our own coins. You then gave us each a detailed description of each coin and why it was special. Inevitably, me and my brothers would argue about who had the better coins, but you always insisted that each one was special in its own way. This cycle repeated every time we saw you. We would get so excited to see you and find out about the new coins that we would receive. While I know we will no longer get to talk about the coins with you, I will always treasure each coin and the memory that comes with it. I'm so grateful that I got to spend the first 17 years of my life with you as my grandpa. While I'm sad that you won't be able to see me graduate high school or find out where I end up at college, I know that you will always be proud of me. I love you always, Sky.
So I haven't had the opportunity to spend as much time with Papa as my siblings did, which means I didn't get to see him at his strongest. Despite taking frequent bathroom breaks, which is something we certainly share, and speaking very subtly, I still believe I had a very strong bond with him. I remember a time when I was maybe 7 years old. Papa's basement had a basketball hoop and balls scattered all over the place. My brother and I would get to the house, and that was the first thing we wanted to do. Papa would come down to play with us, and we would just fool around playing basketball like nothing else mattered. No phones, no screens, no interruptions. It was just me and my brother and Papa. Every time we would leave to go home, or when he had to leave, he would hug me as tight as possible. I would almost suffocate. He would say, "I love you, Papa," and he would expect me to repeat it. And I would, gasping for air, and say, "I love you, Papa." He would say, "I love you too, Brady." And then he would give us the special coins, first to Ari, then Sky, and finally to me. When I was younger, I never paid much attention to them. To me, they were just really shiny coins that I found on the street all the time. It wasn't until I was 10 that I took a closer look. I think it was Thanksgiving. I went up to him and asked if he had more or different types of coins. I was curious and young, and honestly, I might have just wanted more coins than my siblings. We went downstairs, and he opened his big black drawer that was filled with dust. He pulled out this book, this one, with dates from way back in the 19th century, and spent at least a minute or two explaining each individual coin. "This one has a small little D right there," he would say, "and this one has a D and a C, which makes it worth more." I was intrigued. It was so cool to me. After every coin, I would look up their values. It was like $20 for a penny? That's crazy. $40? Oh my gosh. When we finished, I was astounded, and then he handed me the books. I couldn't believe it. That day sparked a forever interest in not only coins, but also old things in general. I felt like a historian. From then on, we talked about coins every chance we had. Don't even get me started on my rock and diamond obsession. When I turned 9, that's all I could think about. And who was better to ask than Diamond Man himself? He was the first person to tell me about my birthstone, topaz. We spent 45 minutes on our knees in his room searching for it. He was the most caring and selfless man I knew. When I was told I had to leave, he said, "I'll keep looking, and if I find one, it's yours." He later called me to tell me that he couldn't find an orange topaz, but he would still try and get one for me. Although we never found an orange topaz, He made up for it by giving me a whole collection of rocks. There was nobody else like Papa. He never thought about himself, only the well-being of those around him. I'm satisfied knowing that the last thing I said to him was, "I love you, Papa."
The stories that my cousins have said about my papa has summed up all the character that I've ever seen from him. So I'll give you one as well. Papa and Grandma Iris were over one night. They were babysitting me and my sister, and we'd play cards. Lots and lots of games. Old Maid, Crazy Eights, name any game, I bet you we played it. We did this many upon many nights. We'd eat our favorite cereals. Grandma Iris would bring over her pop. I'd try a new one every single night. She'd tell me about how great that one was. And Papa would always bring over a new thing, whether it was a rock, whether it was a coin, no matter what it was always an intriguing new possession. And one night, Papa brought over birthstones, like Brady had mentioned earlier. And we were looking over each one. We were looking at the months. My birthstone, my dad's birthstone, my mom's, my sister's. And I remember I dropped one. And we couldn't find it. And me and Papa were searching for one. This was my dad's. It was a ruby for a good 10 minutes. And when we found it, he would get up and he would be very proud and he'd say, "Give this to your dad and tell him that we looked for this for 10 minutes and that he should be very happy that we found it and that prize it very much, and give the rest my sister, give her hers, give my mom hers, and keep one mine for myself, and just prize them very much." And then he'd hug me very tightly, like everyone else has said, and we'd repeat the words to each other, "I love you, Papa."
Being the youngest, I didn't always get the same opportunities that everyone else did, but any minute I got to spend with Papa, I was very happy about. Like when he would twirl me and tuck me into bed, and when he gave Preston those rocks and told him to do that, he didn't at first give me my rock, but eventually he did, and I'll cherish that for the rest of my life. I love you, Papa.
As you either know or have seen thus far, there was a lot of love. His last words to Iris were, "I love you. I really love you." Today we also extend our condolences to Brian's sister and brother-in-law, Pam and Arnie, and to Brian's sister-in-law and brother-in-law, Sandy and Jerry. We are so sorry for your loss. Pam, it was shared with me that two of you were extremely close, and our hearts go out to all of you today. I'd like to pause once again to invite up Jason and then Corey.
Well, I was doing fine until I had to follow them. Thanks. Just echoing what my mom said, it's just so nice to see everybody here, all the familiar faces.
sec.
My dad loved his family more than anything. He would do anything for us. He's been dealing with a variety of health issues for many years now, so it's been a while since he's really been himself. He had a lot to complain about, but he rarely did. Thankfully, my kids were able to enjoy some of the goofier side of him when they were younger, and they used to babysit a lot. I'm so appreciative for that time. So just wanted to take a couple minutes to reminisce about my dad a little bit, some good stuff, just really random thoughts that I jotted down. So my parents are creatures of habit. They still live in the same house on Sumac. MJ is still on my walls and Corey's. I think they took the poster of a half-naked girl off of Corey's wall like 5 years ago. Skylar had a bat mitzvah, and now there's a big picture of Skylar there instead of the naked girl. That's very weird, but a step forward. So, I loved how my dad had his people. Di Pescara, Rosebud, his local Starbucks, the 3 places he ever went. Everybody knew him and everybody loved him, and he felt like a celebrity because these were his places. I love how my dad had the ability to finesse his way into any situation. A restaurant reservation, a better hotel room, get out of a parking ticket. He led with his ability to relate to people, but he did it, in the right way, for the most part. He showed Corey and I the way, and we are proud to pass that on to our kids. I did marry a rule follower over here in Erica, and even she has grown to apply these life skills in her own way. It's been very fun to watch that. I loved how my dad kept Diet Coke in business. I loved that he pushed me to go to law school. I loved how he read the paper every day. He's probably one of the few left who still had it delivered, and he reads it every day. That's where he is. He's in the corner somewhere reading a paper. I love how he had a passion for jewelry. I love that he loved cars. I love how he always paid in cash because that's what you did in the jewelry business. Yet long after he retired, he still did and was probably not who you want to be behind checking out at the grocery store. I love how their block has turned over for the most part, and the younger generation referred to him as Uncle Brian. I thought that was great. I've only got a couple left. Obviously, I didn't sleep a lot last night, and probably 10 to 20 more that popped in my head that I've already forgotten. But he loved nature walks. That was his thing when we were on vacation. I love that you can hear me right now because he's not sitting over there and his phone's going off because he didn't silence it. I love how my dad loves Seinfeld. I love how I openly referred to him as Uncle Leo over the last few years. And he loved it. He would repeat, "I'm an old man, I'm confused." First off, he was. But Seinfeld lines were an easy way for me to change the subject and get him to smile and laugh. As Rabbi Millman pointed out, my dad was more the adventurous one when we were growing up. My mom was more of the scared one. So roller coasters, paragliding, vacation stuff, snorkeling, ski lifts, whitewater rafting, hiking up pyramids in Mexico, even just a bike ride on the trails by our house. that was all him. And as we've talked about, there's been a decline over the last, several years. And so it's just nice to think about him back then. And one sec. So I've got a vivid memory when I was, a little kid, and he's holding me up on a sandbar, and like most kids do, I was thinking like, wow, my dad's just the strongest guy in the world, and I just want to hold on to that picture from today.
Thanks everyone for being here. It's great to see a couple people in particular I know my dad just loved. I had a chance to see a few people when they walked in. Michael Rosen, Sid, Gene, just the beginning of the list, but love you guys, and he has a big smile that you're here. Bear with me a little bit here. I usually pride myself on being the one that's in control or keeping it all together. And so I wrote this down to make sure that I get it all out. My dad was a superhero to me. He was big, he was strong like an ox. He could break your hand with a squeeze of his. A guy's guy, karate. He was a track letterman. He's a student of business who always liked to wheel and deal, and truly able to make my every dream come true. My dad went rafting with my Uncle Alan for a week down the Colorado and came back with stories opposite a rattlesnake. He loved James Bond, and I thought he was 007. He knew every card game, told me stories about how he almost quit working to be a professional gambler, taught me blackjack, and was actually proud that I ran an underground casino in college. He also taught me to fish, ride bikes, ride horses, negotiate with locals on a Mexican beach, took me on roller coasters, climb pyramids, get the cheers early on vacation, travel to see as much of the world as I could, even if my mom's fear of flying kept us mostly touring North America. He told me stories about the Chicago mob, celebrated any links to the outfit, walked around with rolls of cash. He loved the movies, and as a child, to me, he was literally a walking movie hero. My dad taught me the value of $1 and showed me ways to earn one. He incented me to do well in school, even to swim by throwing money in the deep end. As a kid, my dad and I were inseparable. I loved my parents equally, and they did love Jason and I equally, but my dad was the alpha in our family, and I wanted to be him. He was the first to see potential in me, pushed me, made me believe I really could be whatever I wanted to be. I sat behind him in the car growing up. That was my seat. I was viewed as his mini-me, and nothing made me feel safer or happier than when he was proud. He was my one-man moving service, renting a U-Haul, carrying boxes whenever I moved into school. He always had time for me. His original company, started by my great-grandfather, was put out of business in the early 90s recession, but I'm 90% sure his old office phone number was 312-263-5552. I could call it collect at any time, tell whoever answered who I was, and he would make unlimited time for me. He was the boss, he owned the place, and definitely went through hard times, but no transaction or issue was more important than me on the phone. Or again, that's how he made me feel. Every time my kids call and I'm in a meeting or preoccupied with work, this goes through my mind. Am I not meeting his standard? Will my kids know I, too, am here to solve any problem for them? the way I was always so strong with him behind me. My dad wanted to be a lawyer, but was somewhat forced by his father into the family business. He worked hard, real hard, 6 days a week, left early, home after dinner, Saturdays, whatever it took to try and give my brother and I a bright future. He never actually had the success I thought he did. While he had a very close relationship with his own very successful father and took over the business, he ended up dealt a very weak hand and didn't have what I thought he did, partly because he traded in his own dreams for mine. My dad was literally a shirt off his back type of guy. Even while riding through some of his most scary professional moments, one in which I am fully convinced during the early 90s recession, I walked in on him in a dark room debating his life. He had this amazing ability to hide pain, make me feel like I had everything, and there was no limit to what he could and would do to make my dreams come true. He found a way to give us the world, even if he didn't know how he'd do it. Vacations, cars as a kid, membership at the multiplex where the Bulls would work out, one-on-one private trainers when I wanted to be as strong and tough as him, and the occasional Bulls game, maybe once a year in the upper deck. I remember him buying my mom's dad, his father-in-law, a brand new car when my papa couldn't afford one, with money my dad didn't have. He even peeled out his mafia bankroll to sneak money to Michelle as we were leaving his house when she was borrowing money to get through college and didn't know how she'd pay for health insurance. Again, money that he didn't have, but feeling good enough to solve her problems today, even if they would add to his. He was literally the giving tree, a true rock, and the most selfless person I know. I know how proud he was of me at school and work. It meant the world to him and me that he got to meet mentors of mine, a couple of which are here in this room, that helped with things he couldn't, and even a couple of my clients, one of whom he was excited to finally meet, to thank for getting him in to see a leading doctor at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore when we first found out he had Parkinson's, and another who would make sure he could walk into his favorite physical therapy clinic long after insurance capped his annual number of visits. There would simply be no bills. I will never forget sitting in my car outside of my apartment in Ann Arbor when he pushed me to propose to Michelle, despite being so young, knowing how I felt about her as I was off to grad school. He loved Ari to death as the very first grandchild and the one that always had limitless patience and time for his papa. Skylar was the first daughter and could make him melt. Brady's passion for rare coins lit him up, something so special they could share. I'm so happy they could have some sense for who he was, even if not the same the last 10 years with his mind slowed by Parkinson's, and know they see all the love he had for them and all the lessons I've tried to take from him in protecting and preparing them. No matter how bad the news or how much he wanted to forever be seen as I saw him as a child, he never lied to me when I figured out the right questions to ask. And it was my duty, responsibility, and honor to attend all but one, because he didn't tell me about one, Parkinson's appointments over 15 years. It's a thrill to silently be the one to find ways to slip him cash, make his problems go away, take him to a Bulls game with his grandkids, show him I made it because of him and can now let him rest, I can drive, and he can sit behind me. Dad, I learned from you, and I will always be there when needed, like you were. For those that don't know, the last 15 years have been tough. He didn't have many of the typical Parkinson's symptoms, but it slowed his mind and eventually his body. He wasn't a great patient, and it's been in increasing pain. I now have sense for the struggles that Robin Williams went through. And while every recent conversation started with what was ailing him, I can see his big smile lighting up at my weekly call. I normally call on Tuesdays. I'm pretty regimented. My team at work probably sees the weekly reminder to call my parents every Tuesday on the calendar. This week, I called on Saturday while riding my bike home from the gym in LA, something he would have done. This time I could make out almost everything he said, and I was able to stay on for longer than normal. I texted him a picture I had taken with a famous actor days earlier who was keynote at a conference I had just had the honor of hosting at Goldman for the best people globally at what I do. And he was so proud to hear this and so happy to hear my voice. I'm so glad I happened to call on Saturday versus Tuesday. Dad, thank you for all you did for me. Some people lose their parents early or have a rift that never gets repaired. I literally couldn't have asked for more. You gave me the soft skills to get through any door and navigate the world, and all the love, confidence, and support to succeed. I never had to wonder how you felt about me. I know how you loved me and my family, and I will be the rock for my family and my circle that you always were for yours. Dad, I love you, and I will forever.
Too often we find it difficult emotionally to grasp the truth of what Ecclesiastes tells us. Et la ledet ve'et la mut. That there is a time to be born and a time to die. Intellectually, we know that Ecclesiastes is right. Emotionally, we find it difficult to accept the loss of a family member who is so close and dear. We know that there will be a void in your lives and an emptiness that will remain with you throughout your lifetimes. And while we cannot stay the hands of time that ultimately bring the death of one whom we love, we can affirm that the passing of an individual does not mean his end. The memories of what Brian meant to family and friends will continue to live on in your hearts and in your minds. No words can lessen the pain that you feel today or can fully express how much he is missed and always will be. But try with all your soul, strength, and might to focus on all he did and gave you with his love. Hold on to these thoughts, and most of all, hold on to each other in the difficult days to come. Some people come into our lives and quickly go. Some people move our souls to dance. They awaken us to new understanding with the passing of their wisdom. Some people make the sky more beautiful to gaze upon. They stay in our lives for a while. They leave footprints on our hearts, and we are never, never the same. May the memory of Brian Harris, a true gem, be forever a blessing to all who knew and loved him. Amen. If you're able, I'll invite you to rise at this time for the traditional memorial prayer. El malei rachamim, shochein bamromim, hametzeh menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, b'malot kedoshim utorim, kezohar harakia mazirim, et nishmat Bero ben Moshe, Shalach leolamo, began Eden tehei menuchato, ana bal rachamim, hastirehu beseter kenafecha leolamim, utzror bitzror chaim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, ve'anuach beshalom al mishkavo, ve'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Brian Harris, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. May he rest in peace. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Memorial Park Cemetery located at 9900 Grosse Point Road here in Skokie. The family will be together at the Harris residence at 660 Sumac Road in Highland Park following the interment till 8 p.m. Memorial contributions to the Michael J. Fox Foundation would be appreciated. And for those of you who are joining us online, that information as far as the charity and Shiva can be found on the funeral home's website. For those of you who will be driving to the cemetery in the procession, please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing many of the cars with a flag that will be affixed to the top portion of the car. We'll also have a car in the back of the procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. For your own personal safety, I strongly recommend using your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. Please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to the cemetery. At this time, I invite everyone to please rise and stand in place as the pallbearers come forward as we escort the casket of Brian K. Harris from the chapel along with the pallbearers and Rabbi Melman. You may return to your car.